Like, do you realize what this is? Joanne, this is you proving that A, you either didn't know this, B, are lying, or C, still don't understand what is being told to you. This doesn't suddenly, like, whoa. Even her own fans with her massive account, this is 4 hours on, still aren't loving this one. You know, the likes to quotes ratio on this one. Still time, by the way, JK, you know, you still have time to issue a correction or delete your tweet or state that, oh, yes, so I wasn't aware, actually, that the Nazis did, in fact, target trans people. So, J.K. Rowling posted this today. This is after J.K. Rowling has, of course, gone through a bit of turmoil recently. If you weren't fully aware, she has been intentionally misgendering and dead-naming a TV host in the UK. She is frequently trying to dehumanize her and claim that she's not, in fact, a woman. She's been making very public statements. This ended up going all the way to the UK police, where it was not registered as a hate crime, as they didn't feel that a crime had been committed. They did, however, register it as a hate incident. So for all of the, you know, last remaining J.K. Rowling stands who still want to say things like, she's not a transphobe, show me one example. There you go. As well as the numerous other ones, by the way. Her consistently trying to make jokes about trans women being rapists and stuff like that is certainly what I would point towards for being a very aggressive transphobe. The queen of the TERFs, as you see before you. But the thing with TERFdom is that it is like a pipeline. There's a slow descent into absolute and complete horrifying beliefs, behavior, and I'm not talking about just flat eartherism, although it could end up there. I'm not talking about anti-vax, but it could end up there as well. There's a reason why, again, every single one of these rallies, the TERF rallies, they seem to usually have a lot of Nazis on their side, because when you look at the divider and then you got like a police or someone who's like, hey, by the way, that side over there, the one with all the rainbows and the joy, the happiness, all those beautiful joyous people just dancing around the wondrous of rainbow, that's the pro LGBTQ plus side. So all of you on the anti LGBTQ plus side, you get to be over there with all the guys doing those zig hails, the guys with the shaved heads, the ones who are got the dude with the swastika tattoo. So that's where your side's at. And obviously there's a lot of pushback. You know, I remember, what is it, Parker Posey, is that her name? She was trying to say that, like, we didn't invite the Nazis to the rally. They just showed up and then happened to be exactly on our side and share our beliefs. But we don't agree with them, even though there's some you know, video footage of me saying that there are certain individuals who happen to be very far right that I'm inviting to the rally itself. But, you know, that kind of shit. It seems to be a pretty quick descent. Look at people like Graham Linehan, for example, who lost everything because he is a weird pervert bigot and is just absolutely obsessed with trans people and just cannot let that go, and he's willing to just, again, destroy his entire career, and yet he still blames trans people for doing it, whereas anyone objectively will look at it and be like, it's you do it to yourself, sir, you, just because. Again, the whole listen up liberal kind of rings true here stuff. Posey Parker, thank you, Posey Parker, good, Posey Parker, that's it, yeah, Posey Parker, the soup can lady. So J.K. Rowling posts this. How did you type this out and press send without thinking? I should maybe check my source on this, because it might have been a fever dream. What is she responding to? The Nazis burned books on trans healthcare and research. Why are you so desperate to uphold their ideology around gender? Saying check a source that this happened? That it might have been a fever dream? Oh, this absolutely, yes, did happen. We're talking, of course, again, about the institute run by Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld, who at one point, you know, Adolf Hitler himself said was the, quote, most dangerous Jew in Germany. One of the first mass book burnings that the Nazis did was, again, of the literature that his institute had developed. So this is just a matter of historical record. Yeah, to deny that would be to deny a form or an aspect of the Holocaust, I might add. To turn to the Holocaust Encyclopedia, we will find a very comprehensive article on Magnus Hirschfeld. Magnus Hirschfeld was a German Jewish doctor and a leading researcher of sex, sexuality, and gender. He wrote and lectured widely on these topics, treated and advised patients, and worked on to promote the rights of those who did not conform to existing gender and sexual norms. After Adolf Hitler was appointed chancellor in 1933, Hirschfeld was forced to live in exile. The Nazis vandalized his Institute for Sexual Science in Berlin and forced it to close. Magnus Hirschfeld was a famous doctor who helped pioneer the study of sexuality and gender in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Hirschfeld's belief in the natural diversity of sexual and gender identities was radically different from the traditional views of sexuality and fixed gender roles that were widespread at the time. In May 1933, Nazis looted Hirschfeld's Institute for Sexual Science and destroyed much of the archives in the Berlin book burning. again, it's a matter of public record. Part of the Nazi extermination project of Jewish people did include people who happen to be LGBTQ plus. This is where the pink triangle comes from, and why the pink triangle today has been adopted by the LGBTQ plus movement as a symbol of resistance to, again, Nazi exterminationist projects. One in which I think that J.K. Rowling should be informing herself on. Now, I will give credit to Alejandra Caraballo for trying to educate J.K. Rowling on this topic with you're engaging in Holocaust denial, Joanne, and then some information as well as some, obviously sources for her to read up on, one of them being the Smithsonian Magazine. New research reveals how the Nazis targeted trans people. Last year, a German court acknowledged the possibility that trans people were persecuted by the Nazis. Now you're going to get to see a little game I call moving the goalpost and not being able to admit that you were wrong or learn anything in the process. Yep, and that's what we're going to play right now, because J.K. Rowling is going to clap back. Neither of your articles support the contention that trans people were the first victim. They cannot be the first. No, that's what I was saying. I wasn't saying that this never happened. I was just saying that they literally weren't the first victims of the Nazis. That's it. Yes. Neither of your articles support the contention that trans people were the first victims of the Nazis, or that all research on trans healthcare was burned in 1930s Germany. You are engaging in lying, Alejandra. I know reading is hard, but where did anyone say they were the first victims or that they burnt all books? The facts are that trans people were targeted, and the Hirschfeld Sex Institute was sacked by the Nazis and its contents burned on May 6, 1933. Now, look at this magic trick, that J.K. Rowling's about to perform here. Like Experius Goalpostius. So she posts this. So this is, I guess, to try and prove that this is what I was talking about. So this is the one that she originally took a picture of. This one right here. This is the original screenshot that she's using up here. As we can see, still up there. So this is the one that she's quote tweeting and saying that this never happened. This might be a fever dream. The Nazis burnt books on trans healthcare and research. Why are you so desperate to uphold their ideology around gender? That's what you were denying. You weren't saying they were the first. That's not in the quote tweet. This is it. This is the part that you were doing. But then she adds this part. We lost basically all research on trans health because the Nazis burnt it all down. So I added the second part. So this is me acknowledging that I fucked up publicly. Like, do you realize what this is? Joanne, this is you proving that A, you either didn't know this, B, are lying, or C, still don't understand what is being told to you. This doesn't suddenly, like, whoa. Even her own fans with her massive account, this is 4 hours on, still aren't loving this one. The likes to quotes ratio on this one. Still time, by the way, JK, you still have time to issue a correction or delete your tweet or state that, oh, yes, so I wasn't aware, actually, that the Nazis did, in fact, target trans people and target Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld, who, again, was a Jewish pioneer in these fields and, yes, performed one of the first transgender reassignment surgeries in human history. I believe it was the first, actually, in fact. And, yes, these are different tweets. There's this one, too, which is also pretty fantastic. They did, though. Google Magnus Hirschfeld. I know all about Hirschfeld. Are you sure you want to make him a poster boy for trans medicine? The man who believed in sterilization of the unfit? This is, once again, like the Mott and Bailey style of argumentation or debate. I'm not going to address the fact that I, misspelled his name, so clearly I know a lot about him. Know all about him. Yeah, deeply invested in knowing everything about him. In addition to that, yeah, so that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about, is he truly your hero? Trans people, queer people, is this your king, the man who believed in something that probably you don't agree with? That's not what people are addressing here. Or this form of, again, Holocaust revisionism or Holocaust denial that you are engaging in real time. Now, I know it would be a lot to admit that you were just outright wrong, or you didn't know. I think this might be a case, if we're being as generous as possible, and I shouldn't be, but hey, if we're being as generous as possible, maybe Joanne just didn't know. She just didn't know her own history. She didn't know the history of the Holocaust. She didn't know about Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld. She hadn't checked out the Holocaust Encyclopedia to read these articles. She isn't really well versed on all this, and now she's learning the first time, oh shit, the things that I'm espousing and believing are similar to the things that the Nazis espoused and believed. which is what everyone is, I think, very correctly pointing out right now, right? But yeah, to do the old switch around, like, oh, I'm well adversed on Schieferfeld, and in addition to that, did you know he likes some things you might not think are good? I don't know if she did anything past this. Was that the extent of it? Instant deflection. No. I think that might be as far as it goes. So this is still up. Still has 28,000 likes. Still has 3,000 retweets. Of course, a lot of people who happen to be, I guess, pro J.K. Rowling are retweeting this. A lot of people who are anti-LGBTQ plus retweeting this as well, being like, yeah, this is totally made up. But I'll say that this one might have been too far for even J.K. Rowling fans. I see like a lot of big names are in the replies, like George Takei, for example, who's just like that this actually happened, you know? So yeah. Sorry, George Takei. George Takei is in responses, responding to this, saying that actually, yeah, this in fact did happen, Joanne. Oof. Yeah, this is a bad look. This is a bad look. You could admit that you didn't know, though. And that's all you'd really need to do, right? Just admit that you have no idea what you're talking about, and this is actually something that happened. The original source I linked to that J.K. Rowling is referring to, she's just straight up denying that trans people were targeted by Nazis. This article is by a historian who testified in German court about Nazi persecution of trans people. In the fall of 2022, a German court heard an unusual case. In a civil lawsuit that grew out of a feud on Twitter about whether trans people were victims of the Holocaust, though there is no longer a debate about whether gay men and lesbians were persecuted by the Nazis, there's been very little scholarship on trans people during this period. The court took expert statements from historians before issuing an opinion that essentially acknowledged that trans people were victimized by the Nazi regime. This is an important case. It was the first time a court acknowledged the possibility that trans people were persecuted in Nazi Germany. It was followed a few months later by the Bundestag, Germany's parliament, following and releasing a statement recognizing trans and cisgender people as victims of fascism. Up until the last few years, there'd been little research on trans people under the Nazi regime. Historians like myself are now uncovering more cases like that of Tori Simon, being trans during the Weimar Republic. In 1933, the year that Adolf Hitler took power, the police in Essen, Germany revoked Simon's permit to dress as a woman in public. Simon, who was in her mid-40s, had been living as a woman for many years. The Weimar Republic, the more tolerant and democratic government that existed before Hitler, recognized the rights of trans people through a begrudging, limited way. Under the Republic, police granted trans people permits like the one Simon had. In the 1930s, trans people were called the Tiesler, which is a rarely preferred term for trans people today, but at the time, approximately what is now meant by trans. The police permits were called the Tiesler certificates, and they exempted a person from laws against cross-dressing. Under the Republic, trans people could also change their names legally, though they had to pick from a short pre-approved list. In Berlin, trans people published several magazines and at a political club. Some glamorous trans women worked at international famous El Dorado Cabaret. The sexologist Magnus Hirschfeld, who ran Berlin's Institute for Sexual Science, advocated for the rights of trans people. The rise of Nazi Germany destroyed this relatively open environment. The Nazis shut down the magazines, the El Dorado and Hirschfeld's Institute. Most people who held the Tiesler certificates, as Simon did, had them revoked or watched helplessly as people refused to honor them. This was just beginning of the trouble. Draconian measures against trans people. In Nazi Germany, trans people were not used as a political wedge issue as they are today. There was little public discussion of trans people. What the Nazis did say about them, however, was chilling. The author of the 1938 book, The Problem with the Tiesler, wrote that before Hitler was in power, there was not much that could be done about trans people, but now in Nazi Germany, they could be put in concentration camps or subjected to forced castration. That was good, he believed, because the, quote, asocial mindset of trans people and their supposed frequent criminal activity justifies draconian measures by the state. Does this sound familiar at all, Joanne? Simon was a brave person. I first came across her police file when I was researching trans people at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. The Essen police knew that Simon was the sassy proprietor of an underground club where LGBTQ plus people gathered. In the mid-1930s, she was hauled into court for criticizing the Nazi regime. But then the Gestapo had enough of her. Simon was a danger to youth, the Gestapo officer wrote. Sending her to a concentration camp was, quote, absolutely necessary. I'm not certain what happened to Simon. Her file ends abruptly, with the Gestapo planning her arrest. But there are no actual arrest papers. Hopefully she evaded the police. Other trans women did not escape. At the Habsburg State Archive, I read about H. Bode, who often went out in public dressed as a woman and dated men. Under the Weimar Republic, she held a trans certificate. Nazi police went after her for cross-dressing and for having sex with men. They considered her male, and so her relationship was homosexual and therefore illegal. They sent her to a concentration camp in Buchenwald, where she was eventually murdered. Lydia Backroff of Hamburg was also had the trans pass under the Republic. She made a living from selling sex to male clients. After 1933, the police went after her. They wrote that she was, quote, fundamentally a Tiesler and moral criminals of the worst sort. She too was sent to camp in Mauthausen and was murdered. Bodhi Ashton, The Peripheral Lives of Lydia Baycroft, Trans history and the tyranny of the archive. Trans German, previously misgendered. For a long time, the public didn't know the stories of trans people in Nazi Germany. Early histories tended to misgender trans women, labeling them as men. This is odd, given that when you read the records of their police interrogations, they are remarkably clear about their gender identity, even though they were not helping their cases at all by doing so. Backhoff, for example, told the police, "My sense of sex is fully and completely that of a woman." There was confusion caused by a few cases that by chance first came to light. In these cases, police has acted less violently. For example, there was a well-known case from Berlin where police renewed a trans man's trans certificate after he spent some months in a concentration camp. Historians initially took the case to representatives. Now they have a lot more cases, and we can see that this is an outlier. Police normally revoke the certificates. Through line to today. Today, right-wing attacks against trans people in the United States are intensifying. Through the American Academy of Pediatrics and every other major medical association, approved gender-affirming care for trans kids, Republican politicians have banned it in 22 states, with even more moving to prohibit it. Gender-affirming medicine is now over 100 years old, and it has its roots in Weimar Germany. It would never before be legally restricted in the U.S., yet Missouri has essentially banned it for adults, and other states are trying to restrict adult care. A host of other anti-trans bills are moving through state legislators. I find it fitting then, and also in Canada, by the way, I just did an interview on local TV in Vancouver that I'm, I think, going to officially be able to reveal on Thursday when it comes out. But they were asking questions specifically about that. What about all these laws that are being passed in Canada right now, saying that these are about parental rights? Because that's how it's being framed. Very gender critical style tactics being used in Canada with success, though. Daniel Smith is using the same kind of concerns. Parental rights. This is about parental rights. This is all about protecting kids and giving people parental rights. Even though there's no codified parental rights law or bill in Canada, it would essentially treat children as a form of property, which obviously is something you'd want to avoid. And the very idea of it is something that sounds like very pleasing to the ears for everybody. Who doesn't agree with keeping kids safe? Who doesn't agree with parental rights? Who doesn't agree with the ability to protect children from, evildoers, predators, all that kind of stuff? Yes, on the surface, it all sounds very, very good. But when you look at what it's doing, it's actually trying to limit and restrict the healthcare and or privileges of specifically trans kids. Trans kids exist. They're going to go to school like everybody else. They should feel safe like every other student does. And if they want to be able to use their own preferred pronouns, everyone around them should respect them the way they respect everybody else's preferred pronouns. The same way you've been doing it your whole life. Since you learned the English language as a young child, you've probably been saying, mommy, she, her, daddy, he, him. And if there's a variation of that, I'm sure you've been saying it the other ways as well. Nothing too extreme there to learn, So anyways, very bad day for JK. She's obviously getting a lot of angry responses. A lot of people are being like, "Ooh, yeah, Joanne, this ain't it. Yeah, you might have accidentally done a real big fuck up here." And she's making it worse on herself. I'm gonna add, she's making it worse by not just admitting that she was either wrong or didn't know, and then doubling down and then tripling down, trying to be like, "I know all about Hirschfeld, but did you know that he believed in things that you might not like castration?" And it's like, that's not what you're being called out here for. No one is saying that, Magnus Hirschfeld is a flawless historical figure in every single way. That wasn't what your original tweet was about. You were denying that this even took place. You were saying, what is your source on this? A fever dream? And it's like the Encyclopedia of the Holocaust would be the source on this. There's footage of it. There's literal footage of it taking place. I think Alejandra actually posted that. Hold on. Here we have it. Some pictures. Behold the TERF, the Holocaust Denial pipeline. There are plenty of photos of Nazis storming and burning books in the Institute for Sexual Science. We have copies of the trans materials they burned, which covered trans hormone and surgery techniques, legal issues, and policy. So there's that. Oh, here it is. We have actual video footage. Sorry, Joanne. So this is Nazis burning the books. The thing you said was a fever dream. Here's actual video of it. Those are the baddies. Just so we're clear, these are the baddies. The ones burning the books. Yeah. Why skulls? Are we the baddies? The answer was yes.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Can you please hit the like and subscribe button and maybe leave a comment? It really does help the videos out. But first, the people who produce everything you see before you and make this entire channel possible: Amazing Fletch, Anna Loves Riley, Ariane McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Puppy, Quiet 185, Rachel K, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby K, Cernicus, Spinach Monster, Stellar Vision, Sebastian Demel, Trevbot.exe, Words Greenwood, and Travis McClinton. And also, thank you to every other person who helps fund this show. Their names are on the screen right now. It would not be possible without every single one of them. We cannot thank you enough. And if you want to join the Patreon, please come to patreon.com/theserfs and help us exist.